Well, welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. An interesting list of CGC 9.8 comics today. I think it really turned out really good, just thinking of kind of video ideas I could do. Because, thinking about my CGC 9.8 collection, I realized I have a lot of kind of secondary key issues that a lot of times on the census, there's not as many CGC 9.8s as sort of the more obvious, first appearance key issues out there. A lot of times have over 1,000 in the CGC 9.8. In this list, oftentimes less than 100 in the CGC 9.8 on the census. So I think you can kind of describe a lot of the books that I like to collect as sort of cult-followed, niche-followed books. And you know what? I think that these type of books actually are really good sort of investment-grade books to kind of buy and hold forever, or for the long term. If you're kind of coming at, your comic book collecting from that approach, I always kind of say on this channel, I want to, I've sort of amassed this collection over the last 2 years, and I hope to really hold it for over 20 years, like a very long-term type horizon for, my comic book investing philosophy, I guess you could call it. So, they make really great investment-grade books. So, thought I would assemble a list, 7 cult niche CGC 9.8 comic books that you can buy and hold forever. So, let's get right into the list, because I got some honorable mentions too, so, hopefully this video doesn't go too long. First book, Batman book we'll start with here, Detective 523. So this is the first cameo appearance of Killer Croc. And great cover, I think, with the sort of one-toned cover. The reason I say this is a bit of a niche-followed book is because I think it's this book in Batman 357, they're big keys of this generation, and I feel like they're just kind of like a love it or hate it type of book for some people. I'm a Batman fan. I love these covers. I just remember the single-toned nature of them when I was a kid, and I remember they were quite expensive for Batman books too. Me being like 10 years old in 1995, I'm kind of talking here, so this was always a book I really thought was cool. And, looking on the census, I really drilled down and, wanted to pick up this book when I saw on the census. This morning I was looking at 32 CGC 9.8s in the blue label out there. Only 32. 24% the CGC 9.8 ratio, but not a lot graded at all. It's, certainly kind of is definitely a niche, a niche cult type of book. But, with 32 on the census, and, I'm certainly on the side of really, really liking it and thinking it's a classic Batman book, and you got a sweet cameo of Killer Croc. Great cover with Solomon Grundy, who's kind of like an undead villain, sort of. And it's almost like a sketch cover where, before sketch covers even were around, although it's like a color-toned sketch type of cover. But, yeah, a book I really like. Let's talk price here. I grabbed this one for, I think it was $290. I'm kind of forgetting the exact price. $280 to $290. It was getting up to $300. I wanted to pay closer to $250 is what I remember. So it was getting closer to $300. But you know what? For me, only 32 out there. This one very well centered, very nice colors too. That was another reason why I was just like, you know what? 10, 20 bucks. I'm not going to think about that. Like, wow, like what a great example. So I think I did end up paying $280 something. I forget the exact price, but for that price, I think it's a good book. I was looking on eBay today too. There's one for like $900 or best offer out there, and I think you got to be careful on some of these issues because with there being only 32 of these in the CGC 9.8, you see those, those buy it now or best offers with with this book, $900 or best offer is on eBay right now, I believe. You kind of want to disregard those. I think the fair market value for this book is about anywhere from $250 to $300. And for a really nice one, because there's only 32 out there, I think it's definitely worth like $280, $290. If you're a Batman fan, one of the coolest kind of cult niche books that I love. It's kind of a love-or-hate with this book and Batman 357, I think. But, I really love them. And if you're a Batman fan, I'd recommend them. Next book is one I don't have. And, I've it's a book that kind of caught my attention because of the price action, and there's a lot of people that were bidding on it and things like that. And I'm talking in the last 6 months here of sort of seeing this book in CGC 9.8 in auctions. But it's a Spectacular Spider-Man number 101, the really cool John Byrne black costume Spider-Man cover that's kind of captivated people. And this book is really not a key issue. It's definitely, I would say, a really good example of a cult niche followed book. Like, there's really no reason for this book to be collectible because there's no first appearance, no keys, but such a cool John Byrne cover. Again, this one being black and white, it's almost like a sketch cover before sketch covers even got cool. It's like the first sketch cover almost. But Black Costume Spidey, John Byrne does have a huge following of fans, and for good reason. I mean, everything he did in the 80s was just awesome art, great colors. He was a part of so many iconic series: Uncanny X-Men, Fantastic Four, I believe on this book he just did the cover art for this book. I'm pretty sure. But there's 57 CGC 9.8s out there, so not a lot, and 32% is the CGC 9.8 ratio, so it's not that rare at all either. And I think a good deal for this book is sort of under $300, and I've seen auctions go over $300, but every now and then you're going to see one for under $300. But a really good example of a cult followed book, because the 32% CGC 9.8 ratio was surprising, because a lot of times some of these cult followed books, the reason that happens is because they're just really rare for some reason. But this one, not really relatively rare. Although there is only 57 out there, it definitely classifies as like an under-followed cult book. But you'd think for a book going close to $300, that's not a key issue. The CGC 9.8 ratio would be a little bit lower, but not very relatively rare. And definitely a really great example of just the cover's awesome. When people see it, they're captivated by it and they want it. And for me, I don't have the biggest nostalgic connection to this book, but I'm coming around on it. At first, I remember 6 months to a year ago seeing auctions for this book and just being like, why is this going for so much? What's going on here? And looking into it, no first appearance, and then I saw that it was a John Byrne cover, and I know he does have a very big cult of following fans and has done so many great key issues. And I know, the X-Men run is that's one of my favorite run of comic books in history, I think, by John Byrne and Terry Austin and Dave Cockrum in there too. So Spectacular Spider-Man 101, if it catches your eye, this is kind of a cult niche book that I think you could buy in the CGC 9.8 for under $300, get it closer to $250 hopefully. And I don't think it's one that is going to just cool off and really go down in price. It's just, there's no promotion behind this book, and it just seems to have this big cult following. So and I think over time that'll just get a bit better. And with only 57 in the CGC 9.8, a 1 in 57 collector item of something that has a cult following, I think is really cool. So next book is a Batman 423. So this is really the book to get if obviously if you're a huge McFarlane fan, and there's certainly a cult of McFarlane fans out there. And for a lot of reasons, this is a great book. I always, say it's kind of like the Spawn prototype. This comic book with kind of the cape has a mind of its own and is all big and everywhere. The eyes are kind of shadowed out like Spawn a bit. So obviously the sort of circle signature of early McFarlane covers, and all McFarlane covers, I guess. And it's got that sort of error here too. Batman 423 in the first print too. So, this book, 88 CGC 9.8s out there, 14.6%, so really good CGC 9.8 ratio. 14.6% of all graded Batman 423s were CGC 9.8s. And that's Blue Label stats. So, for price for this book, great niche cult followed book. I was thinking, Hulk 340 or this book for sort of this slot in the list for a McFarlane cult book. And I chose this one because there's, 88 in the CGC 9.8 on the census and on the planet. Only 88 of these. I got 2 of them, which is great, 2 of 88. Hulk 340, there's like 600 and something out there in the CGC 9.8s. So a lot more popular. So kind of went with Batman 423 for this cult follow list. 14.6% CGC 9.8 ratio is a very investment grade, pretty low ratio. Yeah, you'd like to see that. Very similar to Hulk 340. So yeah, you know what? This is, if you're a Batman fan and you like Todd McFarlane, this is the book to get. You know, there's homages and there's, you know, some sort of modern McFarlane books and things like that that, you know, get into costing like $200, $300. And when you could, you know, talking about price, when you could pick this book up for just over $400, I would say is a really good price for a nice looking one. For that price, you know, I would just definitely buy this, you know, put that $200 towards this and hopefully try and grab one of these kind of thing. Because I think, yep, for a niche cult type of book, it definitely matches the criteria for a niche follow book. I think it'll be a really good kind of buy and hold forever type of book. Yeah, especially with not a lot of them out there on the census. Lots of McFarlane fans out there that like Batman. That is like the go-to book, and again, under 100 out there. So I think probably the price will kind of steadily rise on that one type of thing. Just more and more classic, more and more wanted over time. Yeah, really recommend if you like Batman. Even Spawn too, with those Spawn prototype elements in the cover. Yeah, so classic for so many ways. Next book. All right. Kept them in the package here. So hopefully there's not too much reflections, but Amazing Spider-Man number 607, the classic Black Cat J. Scott Campbell pin-up cover. You know, there's sort of from this year of Amazing Spider-Man books, there's kind of 2 or 3 Black Cat, you know, J. Scott Campbell, Mary Jane covers in there. And this one is the most expensive in general, so it's the most wanted. And yeah, there's definitely a nice, you know, pretty thriving market for this book. And yeah, it's such a hot cover. And, you know, this book will, a decent deal on this book is kind of $170-ish. I've seen them in an auction go for, it was like $138, something like that. And I think that's rock bottom on this issue. Because I paid for mine, I believe it was $170. And yeah, you don't see them pop up too often, although if you are patient, you will see one in an auction pop up, and you could probably get it for around that 140 level, I would assume. But the other books are kind of going in auction for around 110, 120. So this really is the, you know, J. Scott Campbell Black Cat cover that people are paying up for, that, you know, the collectors sort of want. And a niche following, there's 415 CGC 9.8s in the blue label on the census. Being an Amazing Spider-Man book, you know, you're not going to see it like around 100 on the census like Batman and some DC runs. Yeah, 41.7% is the CGC 9.8 ratio. A modern book, so not as, you know, important. This is a really iconic cover. I think it's still somewhat affordable. I think it's got a really good chance to kind of, over time, go the way of Spectacular Spider-Man 101. Like, not a key issue, just that great Black Cat pinup cover. And J. Scott Campbell is known for drawing ladies. And definitely nailed it on this one. And yeah, the price action sort of shows that it is the one to get. And yeah, I think for an Amazing Spider-Man book, it is kind of a niche followed. You know, there's definitely a lot of key issues that you would think of before in that generation, like the new spider suits and things like that a lot of people would grab sort of before that. But this is more expensive, which shows how, you know, some of these cult type of books can really just advance in price over some of the keys because they're just so cool. Like, that's the great thing about these books, is they are just really so cool. Next one on the list. Definitely a pretty interesting book, I think. A one-off type of book. Transformers number 80. Really glad I kind of picked this up early on in my CGC collecting. It's the last issue in the Transformers run. And like the last 10 issues were really low printed of the Transformers books. The last issue, it's like second in line in the Overstreet price guide as sort of in value within the Transformers run. Like even more than like first Dinobots, and there's a lot of first appearances in there. So it's a very low print run issue, and the census kind of shows that. Yeah, it was 63 CGC 9.8s out there. And this is a 1991 book we're talking about here, so very interesting niche cult book here. This really is a good example of a niche cult book, because in the early 90s, everything was crazy printed, everything. So to have a sort of something low print in the 90s that's still a sort of cool key issue and wanted by collectors and stuff. So this is a really kind of a special situation, I think, with in the CGC 9.8 grade too. As I said, there's a 63 CGC 9.8s on the census. 16.3% is the CGC 9.8 ratio. So of all graded copies, 16.3% of them are CGC 9.8s. For Transformers number 80, again, for an early 90s book, you rarely see anything under 20. There's Batman Adventures number 12, which is under 20. That's looking similar to this, actually. Very similar CGC 9.8 ratio on this book to a Batman Adventures 12, the first appearance of Harley Quinn. So a huge mega key there. That's really expensive. But, yeah, so you know what? I think Transformers number 1 would kind of recommend it. That's one of the obvious key that compares to this with, like, I believe 600 of them in the CGC 9.8. So this, again, these niche sort of cult followed books don't have as many CGC 9.8s on the census. This is a good example of that. Transformers number 1 with like 500 or 600, I think it is. This book with 63. So prices I paid for this, it was like $259.99 American or something like that. And from a seller in Canada, and at the time was looking for something a little bit different in my collection, and just was sort of buying basically Spider-Man and Batman back then, I think it was mostly, and wanted something different, and was still kind of getting into looking at the census more back then, and I noticed this was quite rare, and thought I would kind of jump on it. So yeah, one you can look out for. You'd have to be patient on it. There's only 63 of them out there. I think if you like Transformers though, and you can get this under $300, because there's only 63, and if you have this long-term time horizon, yeah, you could really buy this one and put it away forever. And it being so rare, and you know, I do have a Transformers number 1 CBCS 9.8, because I do think like Transformers are really like iconic brand. Like they make there's a lot of movies out, and like there's a lot of a new generation that like them too, and the toys are still out there, the kids still like the toys. So yeah, I think Transformers books, this is kind of the niche Transformers book to get, other than Transformers 1, which is one I'd recommend to, and certainly in whatever grade you can afford. And yeah, this is the next one, right? Okay, yeah. Next book. So Spawn number 1, and I am going to sort of specify here, you get the newsstand one here in the CGC 9.8, and this is a pretty rare book, a great collectible if you're a huge Spawn fan. And you know, I'd included this on the list because, you know, it seems like with everything that is DC or MCU, or DCU as well, there's a lot of dollars, a lot of promotion behind them, and you get a lot on your Instagram feed about the new DC and Marvel movies, but not too much about Spawn. So I still think it's, you know, a cult, although it's very popular within the comic book community, still like a cult niche followed character. Still a lot of potential too, I think. I think, you know, Todd McFarlane kind of teases a movie almost every year for the last like 10 years. So can't really take, you know, that with too much of a grain of salt, but you want to take it with a grain of salt. But I still think Spawn number 1 in the newsstand, a little bit rare, in whatever grade you can afford. You know, get a raw copy in the best shape you can afford as well. Is a great book to have. And like, so there's 5,237 CGC 9.8s of Spawn number 1 out there. There's a ton. There's like millions printed, or, you know, 1 point something million printed of Spawn number 1. But conservative estimate here, I took 5% of that, which is kind of a conservative estimate of what the newsstand versions would be. And you get 262 of CGC 9.8 Spawn number 1s in the newsstand. So not too many of these out there. It's probably a little higher than that. Like, I would think it probably would be knocking on about 500 of these out there. But, you know, a great book to get, and I think it's a book you know, way better worth paying up for. You know, Spawn number 1 in the direct is $100. It's not a lot, and I think that is a cool book to get for just nostalgia reasons. But if you're kind of coming at it from a bit more of an investment perspective, I think this is the book to get with the newsstand. And price, I saw an auction. It was like $380 something that had just ended about a week ago, and it was in Canada as well. I got outbid on it because there was taxes on that one. I think I mentioned that on the pricing video that we just did. Taxes on that one, so I got outbid. I wasn't really able to be competitive with the taxes. It went for $380 something. I forget what the end price was. I bought mine for $375. So, maybe McFarlane tweeted about Spawn movie about a week or two ago. So maybe that's getting a little bit more hype than normal for this. But, I'm kind of on the record. This is on my want list, and I would, hopefully, I want to get another one in my house for less than $400, or $400 shipped, I guess would be a good price for this book. And if you're in the States, maybe you could do $375 shipped, because you'll have a little more selection. Because a lot of times I'm priced out because the shipping prices are crazy to Canada. So, but I think this still classifies as a cult followed book, and yeah, this is one where it's very wanted, and when you do want to sell it, you'll sell it. You could sell it easy, but you do want to be patient to get a good price, because there's always buy it nows for all these books for like way too much, So do your price research and follow us and look at our pricing video. We do pricing video almost every week, so definitely don't want anyone to overpay for any of these books. Okay, so that was 6 of them, I believe, and this is the last one here. Yeah, one of the books that I think is definitely a cult followed book. I'm a part of the cult. I feel the cult, the part of the cult. Batman Beyond #1, first comic book appearance of Terry McGinnis. Batman Beyond was such a great cartoon when it came out, so well done. Obviously, it hasn't been a movie yet. I've talked about it before. This would make an amazing movie. Would be so good on the big screen. Yeah, I always say Batman Beyond has little rockets in his shoes. It could be sort of like an Iron Man vibe, but Batman Beyond. So much technology could be used because it's in the future kind of thing. And then Bruce Wayne still being incorporated in it would just make such a great movie. But as far as comic books, this came out, really in sort of that midst of that comic book recession, basically. Came out in 1999, this book. So not very well printed is the first thing. And you do want to grab, there's the origin issue that has a white box here. There's a couple other prints that are actually really rare that might be worth going after. But if you don't have this book yet, you maybe want to grab one. All the collectors, they just want the first print, basically. Especially when there's a first appearance of Terry McGinnis. I usually like to get the first print, especially if the cover looks the same on all the prints, kind of thing, which it pretty much does for this one. So yeah, I wouldn't get that origin issue. Just the first print Batman Beyond, and the price shows that this is the most wanted one, the first print one, because price getting up there. And we'll look on the census here. 167 CGC 9.8s, and mentioned it came out in the sort of comic book recession of the late 90s, where printing really turned down, and kids weren't as reading as many comic books anymore. Started to play computer games and stuff like that. So printing really went down during this time. It wasn't a well printed book. There's only 167 in the CGC 9.8s, and I think for the popularity of this character and things like that, I've said it in past videos that I think this should have 500 on the census in the CGC 9.8 if it was a well-printed book based on how much people love Batman Beyond type of thing. So, yeah, a book I'd really recommend. The CGC 9.8 ratio is 37%, which is a little bit high, but for these modern books, less about the sort of rarity and more just about the coolness and the demand that's generated. Price for this book. So I paid for mine, one was close to $400 and then one was close to $450. And, sort of had been accused of kind of really overpaying a lot at that point. But since then, I've seen one auction go for $475 in the past month here, let's call it. And then someone on the team had let me know they grabbed one for $490. So this book's heating up, and I had a rejected offer of $465 for a third one, because I have 2 of these in the CGC 9.8 exactly like this. So I did get rejected on the third one for a $465. So the price is really perking up with this book. It really is sort of the modern cult followed book, I think. But still, at the same time, it's a really iconic character, I think, with Batman, obviously, and the potential of a Batman Beyond movie. Like, yeah, I've sort of get excited on camera with this one. I've made quite a few videos with this one recommending it because I do think, like, I think I already made a video when I first started the channel, like, if there's one modern issue that you could get, I really think Batman Beyond #1 is the one to get. And if you're kind of, thinking about it from an investment perspective, the CGC 9.8, not a lot of them out there, 167 on the planet, of a really, really popular character that, if a movie comes out, or, I could see that book going for a lot more. But if that doesn't happen, then, great series, great character. I'd recommend to watch the Batman Beyond cartoons. Start from episode 1. It's amazing. Okay, yeah, that is the list. So I'm going to put the list in the description below along with some of these honorable mentions, because I'm going to go through some honorable mentions. Yeah, so let's just start right off the bat here. The first honorable mention for some cult niche followed books that you can buy and hold forever in CGC 9.8. G.I. Joe Real American Hero Comics, let's just call it. The keys you really want to look at, I think, that are really cult followed is that G.I. Joe Special #1 with the Spider-Man #1 cover homage. Very cult followed in the CGC 9.8, less than 100 on the census. Very similar, would fit really well into this list. G.I. Joe #1, G.I. Joe #21, which is First Storm Shadow, this classic silent issue. That is well over $1,000 in the CGC 9.8. But yeah, G.I. Joe 1 being a little bit more affordable. So yeah, G.I. Joe kind of, definitely a cult following niche thing, but, still a bit under the radar. I believe that Snake Eyes movie is coming out later this year. So, yeah, probably an interesting time with G.I. Joe's prices if you looked at some of the comics lately and, compared to maybe last year. Because, yeah, they're heating up, I'm pretty sure. Next book on the honorable mentions list, and we did talk about it briefly, Incredible Hulk 340. Yeah, I was sort of thinking, like, because this is definitely a cult-followed McFarlane book, but it was either this or Batman 423. And since Batman 423 has less 9.8s on the census and, a little bit more rare, not as many of them out there, I thought it would be more appropriate for a cult niche list. But Hulk 340 works. It works really good. I think it's a definite investment grade book in the CGC 9.8. Still very well wanted book. Great way to sort of play Hulk 181 as an affordable way to play Hulk 181. Yeah, you're looking about $400, so maybe a little bit over for like a really, really nicely centered, nice everything. Maybe a little bit over 400 in the CGC 9.8. Yeah, it was 600 and something on the census too in the 9.8, so I believe it is. Next book is one I do not have on the honorable mentions. Sandman #1, First Morpheus. Last year I saw this book many times go over $500 in the CGC 9.8. Saw a couple go under 400 as well, sort of around 450. I think one was under 450. An expensive book, yeah. And this is the Neil Gaiman story, and I haven't read this series, so I don't want to comment too much. But it definitely has a cult following. People really like it who read comics a lot. And yeah, it's First Morpheus, Sandman #1, and yeah, one to look at if. And I think, yeah, it fits into that cult niche vibe because it's not like an obvious superhero type thing. Next honorable mention is Ghost Rider. And, I know his first appearance of Ghost Rider, Marvel Spotlight #5. I think we don't talk about sort of early Bronze Age books too much on the channel. They're really expensive in the CGC 9.8 and kind of out of my nostalgia range where, I really like to kind of buy the ones that I just lusted after as a little kid. So, first Ghost Rider, Marvel Spotlight #5, kind of out of my nostalgia radar, let's say. But I think one of the coolest books to get if you're sort of picking early Bronze Age keys, sort of, again, talking from a niche perspective, I think there's a really big niche cult following for Ghost Rider. And yeah, Marvel Spotlight #5, if you are hunting sort of early Bronze, sort of Silver Age keys, I think is one to consider. Next one is Watchmen #1, and I've almost purchased this book, and I think it was over a year ago now, and it was, I was more just getting into the series and watching some of the movies and things like that, and I didn't end up pulling the trigger. A pretty expensive comic, but I think maybe could have had it on the list, but I believe there's like a series that's out right now, and there's, you know, I'm so not on top of like watching TV, so all these like pop culture series, but I'm pretty sure Watchmen, something has been happening with that in the last couple months. And I do like the movie, though. Great movie. Cool, sort of, again, niche cult type of superheroes, not Spider-Man or Batman sort of thing. But so it kind of fits on the list. And last honorable mention here is a book I grabbed recently, so I'll just show it to you. Because definitely kind of a cult, underfollowed type of book. Green Lantern 141, the first appearance of Omega Men. So I kind of got a, you know, an underfollowed, cult-followed superhero team. First appearance in this book. And yeah, I didn't look at the census this morning, but it's like 31 or 32 of these on the census out there on the planet. So yeah, when I kind of saw, I was, you know, I did an unbox of this and mentioning I wanted to grab something different. And, you know, DC, I'm sort of exclusively on the record as saying, like, Batman's pretty much my only DC kind of thing, but always was attracted to Green Lantern, and, yeah, pretty much this was, like, the coolest book on eBay by far, and, like, Green Lantern, CGC 9.8, being that there's only a couple, like, yeah, the low 30s on the census, and I paid low $300 range, it was, like, $325, with, you know, decent shipping to Canada for this. First appearance of Omega Man. No movie with Omega Man yet, so, you know, that's kind of out there, but, you know, really cool George Perez cover. I just think, you know, you get a cool first appearance, it's rare on the census, and then that sort of pin-up Green Lantern, George Perez, sort of pose is super cool, I think. Yeah, so I just kind of fell in love with that cover, and I thought it was perfect for wanting something different. Okay, honorable mentions we got through. I'll go over the list really quick. I will have the list in the description of the kind of main 7 that we went over. First one was Detective 523. Second one, Spectacular Spider-Man 101. Yeah, classic John Byrne, black Spidey sketch cover almost, without it even trying to be a sketch cover, which has just become so popular. Batman 423 was third on the list. Classic Todd McFarlane Batman cover with less than 100 on the CGC census in the CGC 9.8, 88 of them. Amazing Spider-Man 607, the Black Cat pin-up cover to get from J. Scott Campbell. And there's been a lot of like variants since then, but that's the one to get that all the collectors want. Transformers number 80, a rare book. Yeah, one to get to if maybe you have a Transformers 1 and you're looking for kind of a niche cult book. Transformers 80 for sure. Spawn number 1, yeah, the Spawn book to get. Spawn, for me, still classifies as a you know, a cult niche character. Definitely when you're bombarded with DC and MCU news all day on your social media feed too, Spawn does seem more and more like a cult every day. And yeah, Batman Beyond number 1 was the last one. A book that I love, as you already know, because I was smitten over it just a couple minutes ago. So yeah, and I totally recommend all these books. You know, they're kind of secondary key issues, right? They're not, you know, there's more sort of main key issues out there that, you know, on the way out to, these might not sell as easy as, you know, some of these main first appearances with like 600 or 700 CGC 9.8s out there, and there are a ton of those. So, you know, you might not want to grab too many of these, but I do think certainly if you really are involved and really like some of the artists and things like that, and you can get a good pride of ownership from these books. And most importantly, you have a really like long-term time horizon with these books too, because I think now there's basically sort of known as secondary keys, but like a lot of books, I think classic books, just the classic covers that are so cool that captivate collectors, they become keys over time. And then, yeah, there's like a whole thriving market, and the prices can, you know, I think there's, you know, a lot of these on this, as I said, in the CGC 9.8 with less than 100 on the census. There's kind of that wild card with these books that maybe over the very, very long term, these could really go up in price. Like, again, especially if sort of the CGC 9.8 stay around 100 for some of these books. And that's a bit of a wild card. I'm kind of speculating now, but if anything, you know, don't make these kind of books a huge part of your collection, but yeah, whatever you like, you can pick and choose, and if you get a really good pride of ownership from it, they're rare. So yeah, I think these kind of cult niche books, I think, are pretty good candidates for, you know, if you have that very long-term comic book investment horizon, which I do, and, you know, I definitely want to enjoy the ownership of these books for, like, you know, 15, 20 years, and who knows what will happen during that time, but, you know, I'm really more focused on the pride of ownership more so than the price. But I think a lot of times as time goes on, and, you know, I feel like this is a bit true in, like, the stock market too, like, when you have sort of the facts on your side, when there's some, like, tangible evidence, and I'm talking, like, less than 100 on the census, like, with these kind of books, there's not a lot out there. So when you have some facts to look at, usually over the long term, those will tend to work out compared to, you know, maybe something that where there's a ton on the census, like, you know, maybe if you were super bullish on Spawn #1, just the direct, not the newsstand. Like, I wouldn't really recommend to buy too many Spawn #1 directs, because there's a gazillion out there. But the newsstand, you know, has a whole new price market that has, you know, started from it, you know, going back probably 10 years ago now, and is kind of the one the collectors want. And, you know, I would recommend that one. And, yeah, as we talked about on the list. But if you haven't already, I'd invite you to join the team and subscribe to Team CGC 9.8 and hit the bell, get all their latest notifications. Add me on Instagram and Twitter too. I got all the links in the description below. More active on Instagram too if you want to message me or whatever it might be. But yeah, I was kind of really happy with how the list kind of turned out today. I did want to address sort of niche cult books in some way. And I think this is a pretty good list to get some ideas for, you know, some of you collectors out there, and get some ideas for the team if you're hunting for CGC 9.8 books. So, yeah, thanks so much for watching today. Thanks so much for all the support as well. And, yeah, I say it a lot, but just loving a lot of the conversations I'm having on Instagram with some of the team just about, you know, comic books and buying and selling and, you know, sending in offers and getting offers rejected and, you know, and how, you know, being patient and getting a great book. So, yeah, it's great to kind of sort of have a little slice of the buying experience with some people on the team. So, yeah, thanks for everything. Thanks for all the comments and the support, and I'll see you on the next video.